All right, welcome back to another episode of Travel Ball Talk. I'm your host, Rich Prado, owner of Play in School. Today we're heading out to Texas, back to Texas. I feel like a lot of these calls have gone out there. It's almost like there's a lot of baseball in Texas or something. Today we are visiting with the Director of Operations of 12 Baseball, Justin Seeley. Justin, how you doing, man?
Doing wonderful, Rich. Thanks for taking the time for me.
You got it. Yeah, your noise cancellation on your headphones might be cutting off the first like half a second, but we should be able to figure it out. It's no big deal. I've been following 12 baseball for a long time as an East Coaster. You know, it's one of those things I kind of follow from afar. I dig what you guys do, and I've been sort of tracking the growth. You know, I've had some sort of off-air conversations with staff and former staff. So I'm looking forward to doing this as a podcast with you today, so that we can share sort of the story of the entire organization, as well as, you know, find out a little bit about you. So I know a little bit about your story, but I'd love to hear more. And yeah, let's just give you the mic, introduce yourself, catch us up from, you know, how you ended up getting into baseball, and, you know, fast forward to what you're currently doing with 12.
Yeah. Well, I'm an old man, Rich. So at this point, I think I'm 45 years old. So this may take a minute. Grew up in Nacogdoches, Texas, East Texas. For those of you that are not familiar with that, home of Stephen F. Austin, and played there as a baseball player, a little football, which I could bathe myself in. Love that game. And anyway, ended up going to Northeast Texas Community College, played there for a couple of years, and that took me to Nebraska. And at that point, Nebraska baseball was not much on the map, but there was a guy named Dave Van Horn, who is now the head coach at the University of Arkansas, who had become the coach at Nebraska. His pitching coach was a guy named Rob Childress, who eventually became the head coach at Texas A&M. And Mike Anderson was the other assistant, who's now the head coach in Northern Colorado. So went there at a fortunate time, was a pretty solid player, was surrounded by a lot of really good players. Ended up going to Omaha a couple times. We won Big 12 for the first time in 50 years, or first conference tournament, conference championship for Nebraska in 50 years when we won it in 2001. There was not much of a market in professional baseball for 5'9" left-handed hitters that don't throw very good and hit a lot of doubles but not a lot of homers. And so ended up getting out of that, or getting done playing, and I love the game, and I would do it for no $100. And so I went and coached at Paris Junior College for a guy named Darren Clark, and that's where I got my start in coaching, and that was 20 years ago now. And that was an incredible experience. Darren let me do a lot of things and let me screw up a lot of things, which I did. And in the course of that, I got some things right as well. And then from there, went back to Nebraska, coached there for a couple of years, and then went to Texarkana Junior College for one season with one of my best friends, probably my best friend, Will Bolt, who's now the head coach at Nebraska. And was there for a year, and then Rob Childress hired me at Texas A&M, and I ended up being there for 13 seasons in the Big 12 and SEC. Had a great run there, a couple Omahas, super regional every other year. Coached or recruited number one ranked team and multiple times, and then from there we got let go in 2021, and then I went to Oklahoma State for a couple of years, coached for Josh Holliday, which is also a wonderful experience. And Josh is the man, still is the man, and got to coach at O'Brate Stadium, coached a bunch of good players there, and we were a top 8 seed. And, I think both of those years that I was there, and decided to get out, decided to make a change in my life. I've got 3 children, got a beautiful wife, and I'd scratched the itch of college baseball for 20 years. College baseball's changing quite a bit, and it's not something that I originally had set out doing. And I think I got to a point where I was like, you know what, there's other things I can go do. And not that I don't love to work, I love to work. but I could just manage my time a little bit better. And so got in touch with Kevin Hodge, who I was familiar with in my time at Texas A&M and Oklahoma State, who is the owner of the Texas 12. And Kevin's like, yeah, I think I got a position for you. So started doing that. And to your original point, I'm now the COO of the Texas 12. And then I also work for the Arizona Diamondbacks, too. So got a lot of jobs, got a lot of kids, and got a lot of love for the game of baseball.
That's a pretty good synopsis of the last 20 plus years of your life. I had to pull up a map of the town you grew up in. That's the same town as where Stephen F. Austin is, and
Yep.
I've never been there. It doesn't look like a whole lot around that area. I mean, for an East Coaster, when I'm thinking Texas, obviously you got a couple of really big towns. You got Dallas, Fort Worth, you got Houston, San Antonio, you got Austin. And then, again, this is somebody with limited experience. There's a whole lot of space in between and a whole lot of small towns. What was it like growing up there in, it is a college town, but not a big town. What was that like?
Yep. Yeah, it was awesome. Both my parents were educators. So my mom taught first grade. My dad taught seniors in high school. My dad was a coach as well. So there wasn't anybody in town that, we didn't touch in some form or fashion as a family. So there was nothing I was going to be able to get away with. And I think I probably knew that at a young age, even though I probably tried. So that part was good. My parents were wonderful. And it was a great town to grow up in. It was probably the perfect town for my personality at that point in my life, and kept me out of trouble, kept me focused on I wasn't overly talented, so I needed to be super focused. I think everybody should be, but I needed to be super focused, and it allowed me to probably reach close to my ceiling as a baseball player, and then also just shaped me, I think, from a personal standpoint to maybe the person I am today, where my priorities are, and not that mine are always correct, but it's I'm happy with my priorities. So it was a wonderful experience growing up there.
Now, were my ears misleading me when I thought I heard you mention that you played a little football, but you also mentioned you were a 5'9" left-handed hitter? How'd those two coincide?
Yeah.
Is it offensive to ask if you were a kicker? Like, what did you do on the football field? I'm curious.
No, I wish I was a kicker. I might still be playing, quite honestly. I tell my son that all the time. Be a long snapper, kicker, or golfer. I mean, those are probably three best professions going, honestly. No, not a kicker. Played receiver, played quarterback, played on the outside, played corner or safety, and at that point, Rich, you got to remember, and 20 years ago, people weren't as big as they are now, too. So I could probably get away with a little bit more, and I liked the weight room at that point.
Yeah,
so I was.
You were strong,
and
I'm assuming you were fast too. Just listening.
Yeah,
to these
I run okay. For a high school football player, I ran okay. Yeah, no, let's not get carried away and think that I was any sort of college level football player or anything like that. But I was solid.
All right, so this is where I was going with that question is then fast forward a little bit, you end up at several of like the biggest football schools in the country. What was it like seeing these guys? God, I mean, Nebraska, that was Tom Osborne's time at Nebraska, wasn't it? Was he still the head coach, or had he already left when you got to
Tom? He was wrapping up his career, so I crossed over with him and Frank Solich. And and you bring up a good point. So you've kind of put the dots together really well. There's no internet really at this time, Rich. So
yeah, trust. I'm your exact.
A small town.
Yeah.
I'm from a small town in East Texas, so I don't know any better about a lot of things. And I go to Nebraska for my visit. And I've got visits lined up at Alabama, at LSU. I signed with Texas my freshman year. So I was being recruited by some of the better teams in the country at that time. And I go for my first visit to Nebraska, and it's 70 and sunny. They actually play, ironically, they play Texas A&M. Texas A&M doesn't cross the 50 the whole day. They win by 30 or 40 points, something like that. And Dave Van Horn offers me a scholarship, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, it's going to be 70 and sunny here all the time. And then I get to watch this great football, which Nebraska at that time was modern day Alabama, and I'm going to get to play baseball. Well, yeah, sign me up. Let's do this. And so, really, the football might have been the biggest selling point for me personally to why I actually went there. Little did I know in 2 months there was going to be snow on the ground. And Will hate me for saying that, but it's the truth. There'll be snow on the ground here in 2 months, and that part of it is great for one day, but it's not great for a lot of days.
Oh man, I'll tell you what. I think those visits they make or break a recruiting process. I should back up. In the late 90s, when we were going through recruiting, which is totally different than today's recruiting process, that visit was so important. I made a visit to a school here in Virginia that was kind of like, it's a fine school. Their baseball field was on a river. It was like a home opener, and it was cold. And before the national anthem ended, I was out. I was done. I was like, no way. The school I ended up at, I went on a day like you. It's Bluebird, 75. The whole campus is out playing wiffle ball. Little did I know, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Little I know, it was a once-a-year fundraising event that some fraternity put on. And come to find out, it's cold everywhere in February when the season starts. I didn't put that together. Yep. Not just on that, not just at that one field that happened to have the wind blowing in from the river. But yeah, the visit, again, back in the day, the visit was so key. And I think kids should be visiting campuses. But I digress. So all of a sudden, you're on these campuses with these monsters. So, I mean, you're talking about guys who are going to be in the NFL like 5 minutes after you were there. And did you, I mean, you just must have been just kind of surrounded by greatness on the football field. And these guys are walking around campus. I think a lot of folks have gone to some of these schools with guys like that. But do you remember like rubbing elbows with some of those guys that were on those? Yeah. Again, it was literally, for those who were too young to remember, like that was the modern day Alabama, the Nebraska squads of the mid to late 90s with Tom Osborne and company were just brutal.
Yeah. So my recruiting visit, I'm there with the backup quarterback, a guy named Eric Crouch, who wins the Heisman Trophy. I think maybe a season and a half later, something like that. And then, so I don't know. I mean, Amon Green and Ndamukong Suh, been around Von Miller, Myles Garrett, Johnny Manziel, Kyler Murray, Pat Mahomes. I mean, you name it. I've kind of bumped up against all those guys at some form. Truth be told, Zach Taylor, who's the head coach of the Bengals, one of my buddies. I mean, truth be told, like baseball and football, there are a lot of similarities, especially at the quarterback position, quite honestly, because a lot of those guys that are quarterbacks are, they have played baseball before, so a lot of them for sure.
Now, I want to zig. I'm going to probably zig and zag 100 times today. I want to sort of compare and contrast that experience of the big time. You got 50,000, 60, 70,000 people in the stands watching that sort of, and you're right there along with them, shoulder to shoulder. Compare that experience and talk to me about like that Paris Junior College experience. You're talking about going from the biggest of the big down to, and then Paris is good, okay, but it's not Texas A&M. So what was that like going down to Paris Junior College?
Yeah, I think, playing in junior college, let me back up. B, playing in junior college. A, my upbringing with my parents. I didn't take much for granted. So whatever I was gifted or given, I always took it as something that was like it's a blessing. Like if I was gifted or given the situation of being at Paris Junior College, well, I was gifted and given the situation of being with a very good head coach in Darren Clark and at a place where I was going to be able to work and I was going to have no distractions and I was going to be able to sharpen my craft and be great with the players and cultivate relationships because they had nothing else going on other than to look at my ugly mug. And, I think at Nebraska, too, and I think the last part of that equation would be the guys that I worked for or that I played for there. They were very hardworking, blue collar, no nonsense, straightforward, with a good sense of humor. And so I think, they were able to laugh at themselves when they made mistakes, although they've made very few. And so I think that helped me a lot, those three things, going from Nebraska to Paris or from Nebraska to Texarkana. I really I appreciated everything that I got to do at those places and looked at them as places where, if I did my part, that it was going to do nothing but springboard me into maybe some of the other things that I wanted to do, but I needed to be the best at where I was first.
Man, two great takeaways. Being able to laugh at yourself and having appreciation. Man, those are two great takeaways. This podcast is called Travel Ball Talk. We will eventually talk about travel ball stuff in 12. But I'm a little bit curious about your current gig with the Diamondbacks, and thought I'd give you an opening to share whatever you want to share about that.
Yep. So I've grown up a Rangers fan, and the irony of this job is I'm rooting for the Rangers when they win the World Series and they beat Arizona 2 seasons ago, and then lo and behold, I haven't even got to fully celebrate that. They had reached out to me and asked me if I'd be interested in working for them as a scout, and I said no initially, but I said no because I just didn't think that I would have the time or ability to do it. But then there are so many great platforms and things that assist with that role now, and things that I had gotten good at as a college coach as well that kind of helped me. And then we went through the schedule, and I realized that, I would have enough time. They would afford me enough time to do my job with the 12. And Kevin Hodge, who again is our owner, gave me the blessing. And so ended up taking that job. That's been great because I get to go scratch some of my college baseball itch and professional baseball itch that I have, while I'm basically intertwined with all 3 levels of baseball. I'm intertwined with the youth model. I'm intertwined with college athletics, the highest level of amateurs, and then I'm also intertwined with Major League Baseball. So it's been a very good marriage for me to this point, and the people with Arizona have been fabulous to me.
Yeah, that is man, that is great. You've designed a life that not only allows you to do those things on the baseball side, but also allows you to sleep in your own bed, most nights of the year, which is, I'm assuming, after a long career of college coaching, was one of the things you wanted to do. Because college coaching looks awesome from the outside, but man, part of the hard part is just being away from home. You've got a growing family, wife, kids, all that stuff. But now you're back with 12. Diamondbacks are like, hey, you don't have to be on the road 250 days a year. So it's like the perfect marriage, like you said.
Yeah, the tools that they give you, we've all gotten better at what we do, So the tools that you get to go do those jobs are so much better than if I'd have been tasked with doing this or thought about doing this 10 years ago, no shot, no way. But now, yeah, the ability to do it because you can really hone in on where the players are and you can schedule, which was, you were talking about the college baseball thing, and I don't ever want to scare anybody away from doing that because I loved what I did for 20 years, but you don't get to schedule your time there. You are on call all the time. And this
Yeah.
affords me the opportunity. If my son plays, I can just adjust my schedule around when my son plays, and I can still get all my work done. In college baseball, you were just on call all the time, which is, that dynamic is the dynamic that ultimately got me to where I am today.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's talk 12 a little bit. When you were a college coach, I'm sure you were running across Kevin Hodge and the Texas 12. From that perspective, when your college coaching hat on, what was sort of the scouting report of the organization from that side? If you could put your college coach hat on for a second.
Yeah, so I saw it from its infancy, and I was about as close to it as anybody, just being in College Station, which is where the 12 started, and Kevin Hodge and Greg Bennett being the ones that started the business. And it really wasn't a business; it was just teams initially. But I got to see it from its infancy to where it is now. And I don't mean this as any slight to anybody else, but they were the most organized organization that I ran across. I knew where their players were going to be. I knew when they were going to be pitching. I knew who was going to be playing. And then they were accurate on the assessments of who the players were. And so when it comes to trying to be efficient as a college coach, when people do that, that means that you spend more of your time going to see their players or deciding if you're going to go see their players, because you can't be in two places at one time. And so you have to be efficient with your time. So I have to know what I'm getting when I go. And if I miss something or the player's not what he was said to be or led to be, then that ends up being a waste of time. And that's time away from us getting better as a program in college. And it's time away from my family, which, as I got older and I started, having more children, that became more important to me, and being efficient. And the 12 just did the best job of that. And I have a business mind, and I've started to cultivate that like towards the back end of my career. And I thought, you know what, if I'm going to get into the business of baseball, then these are the guys that I would want to work with. And so that's why, Kevin and I hooked up initially, is just for those reasons.
It sounds so simple when you say it out loud, but sometimes the simple things aren't done by everybody. You look at today's day and age, you're going to bring a contractor out to your house. Like, if they're just on time and then like fix the thing they're supposed to fix, they seem like a superstar, like an all-star. Yep. The idea that it is such a big deal that an organization would give you sort of accurate assessments on players or scouting reports, whatever you want to call it, and then that they just communicate like efficiently, hey, this is where we're going to be. This is the time we're starting, the field we're at, and this is when that kid's going to pitch, or this is where he's going to be playing on the field. It doesn't sound like that big a deal. But we just heard from a guy that was coaching at a pretty high level that it is, in fact, a pretty big deal. So if anybody's listening, you should probably get out of your own bubble. There's way more shortstops than just the kid who plays for you. Go out, see games, be able to assess talent, be able to communicate efficiently where that kid's going to be, when he's going to be there. And you're going to be helping those college coaches tremendously. I mean, like, what you're saying it sounds so simple, but why isn't everybody doing it? Like, that's the $1 million question, right?
Yeah, well, and if I could add to that, I think just our staff, the directors that are in our staff have all been college coaches, so they have been on that side of it, which I think makes us unique as well. I don't know that there's any other organizations that could boast that. That these guys have all seen players at not just the college level, but at the professional level, or what it takes for a guy, or they've seen big leaguers, or they coach big leaguers, so they know a little bit about what it takes. So they're not speaking from a vantage point of guessing, they're speaking from a vantage point of knowledge. And so that probably gives them a leg up when it comes to this. And there's some people that just, if you see a bunch of average players and you've got one good player, you think that one good player may be elite. Our guys, they have a full understanding of what elite looks like.
That's right. That's what I was trying to convey when I said you got to get out of your bubble, right? Like take it on a one step lower, sort of rung. If you're coaching a local high school and you're playing, 10 other teams this year, you're going to see your shortstop and you're going to see 10 others. You've only seen 11 shortstops this year. So if your guy's the best, cool. He's best out of 11. Like, that's great, but that's not a big pool, right? So your staff has had eyes on hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of guys, and now you're able to compare. I always try and warn coaches about trying to market or sell their guy versus giving that honest assessment. Does that statement, does that come across as a fair statement to make to a staff? And I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, I think, just again, going back to our staff I think now we're at a point, I think we're putting out, I don't know. I mean, we've already got 70 guys, over almost 80 committed in our 2025 class. But they're sit to the right places because our guys have an understanding. They put the proper amount of weight on each level. There's no, and with now parents don't always do this, and I would warn any parents to do this. Like, if you're paying people, what large part of what we get paid for is to give you an honest assessment, and our parents do a good job of listening. But you have to be willing to listen too. You can't just hear what you want to hear. You have to hear what you need to hear sometimes, and that's very difficult when it comes to your children. I have 3 of my own. I understand that notion, but I think our guys put the proper weight on the levels that these guys are going to, and playing now is more important than it ever has been. And when I'm saying playing in college, I'm saying playing as a freshman, it's more important now than it ever has been because it's harder than it ever has been. So being at the right place initially, our guys do a wonderful job of knowing what that is and then conveying that message to our the college coaches and to our parents and to the player, the value of that, not just the and I've worked for the biggest brands in college baseball, but not just the brand that you're going to.
Yeah, I tell you, man, it's tough right now. It's tough. If you don't get on that field quick, then, you see a couple of paths. The kid's going to jump into the portal. The staff is going to push the kid into the portal, or the kid can try and stick it out, but it's like more and more.
Well, the stick it out method going away. That's the problem. If we're being honest.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's like, if you didn't play this year, what makes you think you're going to get on the field next year? It's such a tough environment right now. Unfortunately, the days of going to a place where you think you can develop for two plus years and then, all of a sudden earn a spot junior year might be behind us, which means to sort of reiterate what you've said, is like, lean on your staff to find a place that's the good fit where you're going to be able to go in and be a guy tomorrow, day one.
Yep.
Day one.
Yep.
What's your, now you're out of it a couple years now, but gosh, I mean, you were in the thick of it as this whole NCAA world was shifting. It was kind of shifting under your feet. Where do you think about where we're at, and do you have any predictions of where we're going from a sort of an NCAA, just 30,000 foot view?
Well, if I made a prediction as to where we're going, I would certainly be wrong in that prediction, because I don't know that anybody does. Whether you're Greg Sankey or anybody else, I don't know that they wholeheartedly know. I would say this: the amount of shift within the last 3 to 4 years has been more than probably there was in the previous 30. and
I'd buy that.
what is going on. Not necessarily all bad. I think people paint it with a bad brush a lot of times. But I don't know that it's all bad, because I can tell you this: I'm all for kids getting paid to go play. If the market says they should, then I don't know why they shouldn't. But what I do think, and you hear it, especially now, college football coaches are sometimes, they make me giggle, because now they're living in college baseball coaches' world with different salary caps and all that stuff. So, the things that they cry about now is somewhat laughable. But, I think coaches having the understanding of they have to win now, the temperament of, especially at the highest level, the temperament of the mast is you have to win now. So there's a lot of things that you have to do with players that we didn't have to do for a long, long time. There was more of a development team culture type model, and those things still exist, but it's not at the same level. It is with unlimited free agency. Can it, when you're paying people what coaches are now getting paid, especially at the highest level. So, kind of going back again, like taking one step back to what we were talking about before, I think finding the right fit for you initially is that's gold.
Gold.
Because there are still some points in baseball that still have some of the things that maybe we all used to love. It's a little bit different, but maybe they still have a lot of those things. And it's just not probably at the top level. That game has definitely changed.
It feels like the wild, wild west. And does a kid deserve to get paid? So the light gets shined on that question so brightly when the coach is the highest paid state employee, right? When the sanctioning body of the NCAA is making $1 billion, right? Like, when you put it in that perspective, you're like, yeah, those kids should get paid. But sometimes I'm like, well, I mean, golly, should the NCAA be making billions of dollars? And should a public, a state employee who's coaching football or basketball be the highest paid employee in the state? I don't know. Maybe not. So it's
the market says so. I mean, I don't. Yeah,
for sure. For sure.
And I've come from that world, so I'm probably going to defend it. But if the market says so, I think you should, and I think that's where I land with the players too. If the market says so, then I think you should. Now, should there be guardrails on it? Certainly, like there is in the NFL, there is in Major League Baseball, there is in the NBA, any other professional sport, which is where you're veering this, vehicle to.
Yeah,
they should have guardrails. The problem right now is there are no guardrails, and that's where it becomes real sticky.
And again, I'm just trying to zoom out a little bit and go, well, if we're going to pay them, let's just go ahead and why do they need to go to class then? Let's just call it what it is, and let's just make it another professional league. Why are we asking these why are we asking these kids to go to class? They're not, it's like, this is, if we have total free agency and we're getting paid $1 million to play ball, what's the charade? Is it really college athletics anymore? And so maybe
my argument to that would be that the players do sign up for it. They do have other options. They could go play professional baseball. So, my argument would be, if you're going to be in that system, you're going to be in that model, then you should have to go to class. You should have to fulfill your obligations there while you are also getting paid. So I think that's part. And I mean, listen, that's why people go to these games. I mean, they go for the players, but the brands in college athletics are bigger than the players. And, the market backs that up, because they're the brand is the one that's going to get the revenue share. The university or the entities that control that are then the ones that are going to distribute it.
I don't remember if you and I spoke about this the other day, but I heard a really interesting point of view, and I can't remember who said this, so I can't attribute them, but Basically, it was like at the pro level, everybody seems to be currently rooting for players, right? Especially with the growth of fantasy. Doesn't matter the sport. If you go and find, like, I bet your kids, or, we could use them as an example. They'll probably have their favorite ball player. And if he gets traded, he's going to stick with that favorite ball player versus in college, it feels like we're still rooting for the logo, for the brand, for the institution.
Yep.
Which is kind of cool. Like, you know what I mean? But like, man, it also feels like, are we already doing, I don't follow fantasy sports. Are we doing fantasy sports at the college level right now, or is that not happening? That's an honest question. I don't
either, but I hope not.
I hope not either. But like, if we're 5 seconds away from it, if we're not already doing it, and again, the advent of free agency at the college level, I fear could erode some of that institutional, fanaticism where we're gonna root for A&M next year no matter who, right? All of a sudden you get a guy, and now we root for that guy, and if he gets traded across the state next year, we're gonna root for that guy just across the state. It's such a weird dichotomy between the pro and college game right now, but it feels like it's merging. It feels like we're heading down the same path at a very rapid level. Hey, I know we've got a kind of a hard stop in about 8 or 10 minutes, and I've really appreciated your perspective from your experience on some of these topics. But I want to give you a chance to just talk on a couple other things. First, I'm aware from a high level that 12 comes from culturally, there's like at a high level, there's a this faith-based culture within that's from the top down. And I thought I'd give you a second to just talk about that.
Yeah, appreciate that. So the genesis of the organization. Now, the marketing part of this was not. Trust me, these guys are not. They're pretty intelligent, so they knew what they were doing. But if the 12 started in College Station, it is College Station or Texas A&M is the home of the 12th man, and so we are maroon, and we have the number 12 on our hat. So the marketing part of that was genius, right? But the real genesis behind the number 12 is for the 12 disciples. And so we have faith is the big part of my life. It's not the big part of life. It's the biggest part of my life. And it's something that, one of the reasons that drew me to this organization outside of the ones that you and I discussed earlier from a baseball and business standpoint. But I think that element, it makes us a little bit different in how we carry ourselves and what we put value in. And it's probably also what makes us really good at what we do too, because, going back to the, being able to see the player win and where and what I need to be able to do from a college coaching standpoint, we will play for the player's best interest along with the team. And so we don't put winning the tournament in the middle of July in front of what's in the player's best interest. So we don't throw guys, an amount that is not safe. We put our guys in a position to be seen. And we have good enough players and good enough coaches that we still win and compete at the highest level. And where I think, other organizations may sometimes you just get caught up in winning, which I completely understand because I'm as competitive as anybody. But I think that's one of the things that maybe helps us. And I think one of the questions I know that you and I were going to talk about is what if you were starting an organization, what would you do? I think that's it. I think it's having a North Star. It's having something that you're going to stand for, because it makes decision-making from there on out really simple. If you don't know what you stand for initially, it makes it you can get enamored by shiny. I have shiny object syndrome too, just like everybody else. You can get enamored by those things. But if you have something that you're always going to come back to, it makes decision making a lot easier.
And I'll tell you, when you're dealing with the volume of families that you guys are dealing with, that being able to lean back on something so that your decision making process is simpler, that's huge. That's huge. We probably did not. We haven't touched into this at all, but I just referenced y'all's volume. Can you talk a little bit about the size, because this is a little different. I've had guys on the podcast with one team. I've had guys on the podcast with 10, 50, 100 teams. Can you talk about y'all's volume and how you've been able to scale the numbers and just, quite frankly, handle it?
Yeah, that's not easy, but with the level that we scaled to. So, and we're not just baseball too; we're softball as well. So, if you have any of that kind of viewership, with the people that listen, we're softball as well. And Megan Gibson, who's formerly Megan Lofton, is one of probably the 10 best college softball players of all time. She runs our softball as well. But we're up to answer your question, we're up to, I think, north of 170 teams. We've got 6 different locations right now. They're all in Texas. And I think that's where we will probably stay for the foreseeable future. There's a grocery brand down here. You may not be familiar with it. It's called H-E-B, and H-E-B is in Texas, and it's the greatest grocery brand to me that there is down here. And they hit all the right things, but they haven't really branched outside of the state of Texas, and they kind of know where their niche is. And I think we do too. And kind of going back to making sure that your decision making is easy. I think that's something that we have definitely thought about. Now Texas is an enormous place, so it's not like
for sure.
We're limiting ourselves a ton. But, so we're up to 170 teams. I mean, and we've had here recently, the amount of success that we've had is I would say it's, comparable with just about anybody. I think we've had 4 first rounders in the last 5 drafts. We've got 5 guys in the D1 baseball's top 150 draft prospects that are juniors right now. I think we have over 400 guys in college at the moment. So, with that volume, we've also been able to point people in the right direction, and we have a model that allows them to succeed and get into their goals. Like, quite honestly, is to go play college baseball, and then hopefully we've done a good enough job to put them in a position where they're not just in college baseball, but they're making an impact in college baseball, and eventually, hopefully, if they're good enough, making an impact in professional baseball. So, it's been it's not a fast ride. I would encourage anybody that thinks that's the way it's going to go. I was not on the front end of it from the business standpoint, but I've seen it from the front end. And we're talking, this is over a decade in the making. This is a decade and a half in the making now that I think about it. So this has taken a lot of time and effort. And from a business standpoint, we have gone from a no business to a small business. So now we're kind of morphing into a mid-sized business, and there's this just with all the people that you visit with, there are some growing pains that go along with that, and trying to be efficient and making sure that your families are getting the proper information accurately, efficiently, and that you're over communicating a lot of times.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Do you have 60 more seconds?
Yeah, I got a couple minutes. We're good.
All right. Well, that's perfect. I want to read. I found a spot on your website that has 4 pillars of 12 culture. I thought I'd just read it because I think there are 4 great bullet points. Be fearlessly different. I love that. God, I love that. I actually did I did a video that was watched. I don't know how many thousands of times, probably 10 years ago, that the title of it was Be Different. So I love that. Be fearlessly different. Bullet point 2, focus on what's important. Bullet point 3, pursue excellence. Bullet point 4, be consistent. Those are 4 tremendous bullet points. 4 pillars of 12 culture. All right, and then I wanted to ask you, because I find this to be a really great resource. One of my questions that I ask almost everybody is, do you have a book or movie or website that you find yourself sharing or recommending to people?
I'm a real big audiobook guy. I'm walking and talking right now, so I mean, you obviously know that, but I like to listen to audiobooks.
All right.
Sitting down reading is a struggle for me.
That's all right.
So there is a book there is a book that I actually did sit down and read, and so I reference it because I actually did sit down and read it, not to mention the fact that it is a very good book. It's called Lead for God's Sake, and it's a parable. It's not a true story, but it's a parable about and for me, it hit home for me just because of where I was in my life. But it's a parable about a coach, a janitor, and a businessman. And in a lot of ways, as a coach, you end up being all 3 people. And at different points in your career, you veer more towards one or the other. And there's obviously a faith element, and you can tell in the title to it, which I think is really, for me, hits home. So I would encourage any coaches. I'll give you a little bit of rundown of the book. The coach in there is how I would have been. How it relates to me. The coach in there was how I would have been early in my career. The janitor is more how I would probably be in my old age. And the businessman in there is how I've been somewhere in between at times. And so all 3 of those people are not separate from me. They all are inside of me. And it's all about how I, where I am in my life based off of which guy I lean into more. And I think, if you're a coach or if you're starting a program and or if you have a program, I think it's a wonderful book to read because it really makes you do some self-reflection and reflect on your faith, and then also how you treat, your people as well.
Awesome. I've not heard of that one, so I'm so glad I asked the question. It's called Lead for God's Sake by Todd Gongwer, Gongwer.
Yeah, I would have butchered it too.
Yeah, that's a great one, and I'll tell you, I'm probably going to be ordering that one. I'm going to check first to see if I have access to it on the audio app that I listen to. It's called Libby. Here's a free tip: you can get a free audio book thing through your public library. They don't have every title, but it's pretty good. Yeah, Libby is the one I use. There's a few of them, but if you go down to the public library in your town, you can get access right there. It's pretty cool. You can save a few bucks there. Let me
spell that, Rich, if you don't mind.
Yeah, the one that Libby, I believe. That's just the one that my local library has a relationship with. But if you go to whatever your local library, those things are free memberships at your local library, and you can ask them, hey, do you have an Audible audio book partner that you guys have access to for members? Now, it's kind of neat. It's almost like going to the library. It's not like there's this limitless selection. It's not. And then when there is a selection, you don't get to keep it forever. It says, hey, you can have this one for 21 days, and then it's gone. So it's kind of like doing a virtual library checkout, basically. So cool. Libby is the one that my library has a partnership with. But I'm going to leave it at that. This has been really fun. I do want to give you a chance to, if you have any parting words for any coaches, parents, or players that might still be listening to you, I'll let you finish up here.
Yeah. I would say we've said most of it. I think my encouragement is always just to try and, whether you're a coach or a parent, or if you're have an organization, is take a moment to step back almost every day and try and evaluate without being the parent the coach or the the owner of the organization, because it gives you a little bit of perspective on what the other parties are looking at, and I think that's how you better service all of the other parties, and it's how you become you don't get so trapped in your own mind. So I try and do that daily. I've got different tools that I use to do daily. I don't get around to it every day, but I really strive to every day. But I think that has been something that has helped me, is to just try and take a moment to step back, which is really difficult when you're a parent and a business owner or a coach. But I do think it's an important thing for you to be the best at what you're doing, at least for me.
So good. So good. Hey, man, I really appreciate you doing this with me. I'm going to stop the recording, but don't hang up. Hang on one more second.